What's going on, everybody? It is your boy Zamboni. I am an herbalist and astrologer, and it is time to talk about the astrology of the week ahead. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for hitting that little save button in the corner. Thank you for sending me a tip via Venmo, Cash App, PayPal. Thank you for just rocking with me for all these weeks. If you're new, thank you for being here this week. Thank you for sending this to a friend. Thank you for being a part of this community. Y'all are really making it possible for me to do this work and to just live through the damn apocalypse. I appreciate all y'all. Thank y'all for being here. Let's talk about the astrology of the week ahead. So this weekend that we just came off of was a pretty big one, right? We had the Saturn-Uranus square. Saturn in Aquarius, square Uranus and Taurus. I've been talking about that for about a year. I'm going to continue to talk about that for another year to come. This is the main thing. It's the main event of this time period, right? Saturn wants to create order, management, efficiency. Saturn in Aquarius is big on, so Saturn, we got to remember that Saturn is in a home sign in Aquarius, right? And so this is Saturn doing the Saturn things in a Saturn-ass way, right? And so Saturn wants to talk about parameters and boundaries and these kinds of things, ways to make the world intelligible and operable in some kind of way. Uranus is like, fuck that, and would prefer liberation over security. And so there's this constant tension between these two. That aspect was perfect over the weekend and that we just came off of. And although it's not going to perfect again down to the minute, we're going to continue to see this kind of stuff showing up throughout the rest of the year that we have to come. And my guess is that there's going to be some echoes of that throughout the rest of this 200-year epoch, which is the era of the air triplicity. If you have questions about that, I talked about that maybe a year ago. And so I'll maybe put that in the stories or something like that so you can check it out again. So that happened over the weekend. The other thing that happened over the weekend was Venus retrograde hit Pluto. So this is our second of 3 Venus-Pluto conjunctions. And so Venus-Pluto has been like deep desires or investigating what is deep underneath. And sort of evaluating that. How do I like this? Do I like it? What kinds of things are good here? What kinds of things are not here? There's a question around safety and violation that can show up here. There are questions around desires that are both naughty and nice. Like, is it okay for me to want the things that I actually want, and these kinds of things. We've seen a lot of this kind of upheaval. Somebody mentioned buried treasure one time. Was that Sun Moon Trine? Shouts to Sun Moon Trine. What's up? Mentioned buried treasure, and that was a really good way of thinking about it. And so, myself, I spent the weekend burying some treasure. It's like fun to do that sometimes, especially under this kind of sky. So one of the things about this Venus-Pluto situation is that, so we just had this Venus-Pluto aspect, and Venus isn't moving super quick right now. So we're going to continue to see this for a little while, especially throughout the week that's coming. But then also this week, we have Mercury in Capricorn, scooting along, just really like handling that business. Mercury's going pretty quick at this point, and it is going to conjoin Venus and conjoin Pluto this week. Now, that is particularly interesting because Mercury is the one who we think of as the psychopomp, the one who takes us from the land of the living to the land of the dead, the one who can go between these worlds. It is Mercury who, in the story of Persephone is kidnapped by Hades, taken to the underworld, becomes the queen of the underworld, whatever. There's a lot that we can sort of talk about that. One day maybe I'll do a sort of deep dive on that story. But it is Hermes who goes down to the underworld, who is the emissary who sort of negotiates Persephone's release. And so it is this kind of like back and forth of Mercury that makes that possible. And to see Mercury coming to conjoin Venus during this time sort of speaks to that communicative element and the negotiation of power, hierarchy, control systems, these kinds of things. What's also particularly interesting here is that Mercury is, we're coming up on a Mercury retrograde. So that Mercury retrograde is going to start in the middle of January. It's going to go back. And so in the beginning of February, we're going to see a Mercury station, and it's going to be right on top of that Pluto. So we can see how this Pluto is involved in all of the stuff right now, right? We can remember that this historical moment that we are in right now was initiated by Saturn Jupiter conjoining in the first degree of Aquarius, yes. But just at that same moment, right, we had the Saturn Pluto conjunction, and Jupiter was present, right? Jupiter's hanging out for that. Jupiter's there at the end of Capricorn as well, right? So this Saturn Jupiter situation also involves Pluto. And so we can see how Venus being in this spot sort of speaks to looking at it again, reevaluating this Pluto stuff. What's really going on here? What are our fears, right? Venus Pluto is a really good way of thinking with fear. And, I've been thinking about that as like, what about these fears are like titillating or desirable or fun or something like this? But then also with Venus, any kind of like uncomfortable Venus, we can think about Venus as like the stuff that you like and stuff that is desirable and fun and stuff like that. Venus in a difficult position often shows finding what you like by way of engaging what you don't like, right? You have some difficult or fearful experiences, and those kind of turn into they show you how you go about desiring things, right? And so this is an all-important area of sky right now. There's a lot of stuff going on here, and typically with the inner planets and stuff, we'll see like maybe a month of activity and then sort of move on out. That's not what's happening with this area of sky. We're going to continue to see this Pluto activated throughout the year coming. Even there's a bunch to say here, and there's a bunch going on. So do pay attention to what's going on right now, and get your heart in a space where you are at least coherent with you, because that I consistently see this with clients and with other people that I'm around, is that there's a difficulty in being true to oneself versus what I'm trying to actually create in the field around me. So do get true about that. Now, I'm running out of time here, so I need to talk about the other stuff. There's big stuff going on this week because Jupiter is going to move into Pisces. Jupiter has been in Aquarius for a long time. Jupiter spent a little bit of time in Pisces earlier on in the year. That was in Q2, in the second quarter of 2021. So we're talking about like March. It was end of March through about July or so. So Jupiter in Pisces, moving out of Aquarius, moving out of a Saturn sign. Jupiter then moving into a Jupiter sign. We like to see Jupiter in a home position, in domicile like this, right? This is, it's fun. We think of Jupiter as being the planet of joy, luck, abundance. We think of, expansion and clarity and wisdom and these kinds of things showing up with Jupiter, right? And so Jupiter in Pisces is a place where Jupiter can do the Jupiter stuff really Jupiterly, right? Same way that Saturn is doing Saturn ass stuff in Aquarius, Jupiter is going to be Jupiter ass Jupiter in Pisces, right? Furthermore, Jupiter in Pisces is not going to be having to deal with the stuff that Saturn is doing. Jupiter for 2 years running has been in Saturn signs, sort of like doing Saturn's bidding. So to see Jupiter escape from that and move into a Jupiter space looks pretty good overall. Now, the thing about this is that there's a couple of important dynamics that we need to pay attention to. First is that we have Mars in Sagittarius right now. So Mars in Sagittarius is going to make an overcoming square to that Jupiter in Pisces. Although that's not exact by degree, that is going to mess up your Jupiter illustrations for a little while, right? If you want to get in on this super nice Jupiter, that Mars is going to fuck that up for a little bit. The other thing to think about here is how this Mars in Sagittarius this week is going to make a sextile to Saturn in Aquarius. So that is likely to be, so a sextile aspect, this is one of our confluent ones, right? Flowing together. This is they're complementary. Sagittarius is fire sign, Aquarius is an air sign. The air and the fire like each other. They blow up this way, right? To see Saturn, so my thinking here is that Saturn is going to lose Jupiter, right? And so if we think about Saturn as authority or management or efficient systems or something like this, then Saturn is going to lose the confirming power or the affirming power of Jupiter. So for the past couple of years, there's been like rampant expansion of systems and I don't know, control dynamics, right? The Saturn thing, Saturn with Pluto, has really like spoken to control dynamics and this sort of stuff. There's been widespread expansion of that, right? And it's been kind of bulletproof, right? Like you can't say anything about the expansion of power and control dynamics. It's just like you can't do it. And I have been ascribing that to Jupiter's presence there. Jupiter has been saying yes to Saturn this whole time, and so Saturn can kind of do no wrong, right? As Jupiter moves out and moves into Pisces, then and without intentions of coming back, right? So before Jupiter moved into Pisces and just did a little toe dip for a second and then had to come back. Now Jupiter is not coming back to Aquarius. We're moving forward, right? So Saturn is going to lose that Jupiter confirmation. I expect that to be difficult for Saturn, right? I expect I expect logistical madness, right? That's one of the things that often shows up whenever you're trying to establish appropriate systems or something like that. It's like you have this idea of what you want to happen, and then once you start to do it, you realize all the places where that can go wrong, especially if we're in 2022, we're looking at a lot of tech stuff, right? We're looking at, especially with Aquarius, Saturn return of the internet, these kind of things, right? There's a lot of complicated technical machinery or systems that, there's that word systems again. I gotta get away from this word. But there's a lot of this complex systematic stuff that is going to, there are a lot of areas where we can engage problems, and Jupiter is going to kind of not be in that space anymore. Just like kind of making it smooth, making it easy, right? So we can expect some difficulty around that Saturn stuff. Saturn is going to start to have problems. Don't forget that we're not just talking about empire, but we're also talking about wherever you are the authority, right? So earlier this week I spoke about when the moon was with Saturn, then it was like moms telling kids no, right? Mom is Saturn in that instance. And so if you're a mom, even if you are not a bastion of empire, then you can still represent Saturn. In fact, you, even if you aren't a mom, are Saturn to somebody in your life, right? And so the Saturn thing is going to it's going to have less ability to just affirm and confirm stuff easily, right? Mars in Sagittarius is going to make a sextile to this Saturn. So this is going to be energizing to this Saturn, especially this week, right? Jupiter is out of Aquarius, and so we're talking about longer term dynamics. But for this week, Mars in Sagittarius looks like it wants to pump up that Saturn. Saturn doesn't necessarily realize that the logistical nightmare that's coming up, right? And so this Mars in Sagittarius, which is still ruled by Jupiter, right? Sagittarius is a Jupiter sign, and so Jupiter moving into Pisces is going to really power up that Mars as well. Mars moving into sextile aspect with Saturn looks like Saturn getting revved up, doing more Saturn stuff. Yeah, this has been going so good for so long. Let's do it. Let's do more Saturn stuff. And then it looks like it wants to be a little bit of a problem for that for that Saturn in the long term. So whatever, if you're thinking about pumping your Saturn up right now, then maybe, just keep your Jupiter in Pisces ruling that Mars, and Mars just has the tendency to get overexcited in the first place. This can turn into a lot. So just like as you're doing that, just check and see are my star glasses on? Do I have, maybe I need to think about my longer term situation. This is going to be a Saturn in Aquarius, which generally thinks about the long term, but might get a little confused this time, or might start to, All right, I'm running out of time. Thank y'all for being here. Thank you for hanging out with me. Thank you for rocking with me all this time. If you want more stuff like this, then check me out on Patreon. I do an electional report there to help you choose good times to launch your business or to send an important email or whatever it is. I do videos. There's an Astro Basics course there. There's a bunch of stuff like this. So if you want to check me out on Patreon, please do that. If you just want to send a tip, then that is super, super helpful. Thank you for doing that. send it to a friend. Y'all know the deal. I'm really out of time here. Thank you so much. I appreciate y'all. I'll see you next time.